We're going to look at the second type of factorisation, which is called a difference of two squares. To recognise the difference of two squares, there are three different things we have to take into consideration. The first one is there are two parts. The second thing is there is a takeaway sign between them. And the last thing is you can take the square root of both parts. You have to remember your square numbers. Square numbers are 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, all the way up to 12 times 12 is 144. Now there are other squares that we have to remember, and that is x squared, which is x times x, b squared, which is b times b, and 4x squared, which is 2x multiplied by 2x. Now, the difference of two squares is an easy process. The rules are you take the square root of each term, then you write them in two brackets. You take one of the brackets and you make one positive and the other one is negative. It doesn't matter which one you use first because you have got two brackets multiplied together and the order of multiplication does not change the answer. So we'll look at the first one here. We've got x squared minus 81. So we can take the square root of x squared, which is x. We can take the square root of 81, which is 9. So we set up two identical brackets. And in the first bracket, we take the square root of x squared, which is x. So we fill in x. We take the square root of 81, which is 9. So we fill in 9. And we make one bracket positive and one bracket negative. Another example. X squared minus 25. We take the square root of x squared, which is x, and we make one bracket with x at the start, and then we take the square root of 25, which is 5, and we make one bracket positive, and we make one bracket negative. X squared minus 4, again we've got a difference of two squares. So we take the square root of x squared, which is again x, fill it into each bracket, and square root of 4 is 2, so we make one bracket positive and we make one bracket negative. We're now going to look at another three examples. First one here we have t squared minus 49. The square root of t squared is t, the square root of 49 is 7, so again two identical brackets. The square root of t squared is t, so we fill that in first, and the square root of 49 is 7, and again one bracket is positive and one bracket is negative. Next one, q squared minus 16, again a difference of two squares because the square root of q squared is q, the square root of 16 is 4. That gives me q plus 4 and q minus 4. Last one, y squared minus 1. The square root of y squared is y. The square root of 1 is 1. So we get y plus 1 multiplied by y minus 1. Here we've got some examples where we do not have numbers involved. So we've got c squared minus y squared. We do exactly the same as what we've done previously. The square root of c squared is c. The square root of y squared is y. So again, make two identical brackets. One bracket will make positive, one bracket will make negative. Square root of c squared is c. Square root of y squared is y. And again, one positive and one negative. Another one. Sometimes you can have a number with a square. So the square root of 1 squared is just 1. Square root of t squared is t, so it's 1 plus t, multiplied by 1 minus t. Next one, I've got 5 squared. The square root of 5 squared is 5. Square root of g squared is g, so 5 plus g, and the second bracket is 5 minus g. Now, sometimes we have numbers involved in a difference of two squares, and It can make the calculations that we do so much easier. Okay, so in this one we've got 98 squared minus 2 squared. It's just an example of how a calculation can be made simpler. So the square root of 98 squared is 98, and the square root of 2 squared is 2. So again, make two identical brackets and make one positive and make one negative. So therefore we get 98 plus 2 is 100, and that is going to be multiplied by 98 minus 2, which is 96, which makes a really simple calculation. So it's 9,600. Sometimes we can have a difference of 2 squares and a common factor. Now if we look at this first one in part A, we can't take the square root of 3x squared. 3 is not a square number, so this is not a difference of 2 squares. 48 is not a square number. So we'll look at it and we'll look for a common factor. The highest common factor is 3, so that will be 3x squared minus 16, as 3 16s are 48. Now when we look at that bracket, we now have a difference of 2 squares. So we write the 3 down and we do a difference of 2 squares exactly the same as we previously have done. We make two identical brackets. The square root of x squared is x, the square root of 16 is 4, and again we make one bracket positive and one bracket negative. Part B, we've got 2x squared minus 50. Again, that's not a square number. 2 is not a square number. 50 is not a square number. So we'll look at the expression. There is a common factor. There's a common factor of 2. So we take out a common factor of 2. So 2 times what gives us 2x squared? It's x squared. 2 times what gives us 50? And it's 25. So therefore, we now look at that bracket. We can take the square root of x squared. We can take the square root of 25. So leave the 2, make two identical brackets, and the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25 is 5. And again, we've got a plus bracket and a minus bracket. Third one, again, we'll look at the expression. 5 is not a square number. 20 is not a square number. So we'll look for a common factor. There's a common factor of 5. So 5 times what gives me 5x squared? It's got to be x squared. 5 times what gives me 20? And that's got to be 4. And again, we now have a difference of 2 squares in the bracket. So we have 5 bracket x plus 2 and 5 bracket x plus 2 times x minus 2. Now, there is another one that you've got to be careful of. Sometimes you have a difference of 2 squares and it's 1 minus x to the power of 4. Both of those terms are squares. So the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of x to the power of 4 is x squared. So if we carry that through as a difference of 2 squares, we take our two identical brackets, and the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of x to the power of 4 is x squared, and we fill that into both brackets, and we make one positive and we make one negative. Now when we look at our answer, if you look at this part here, that again is a difference of 2 squares. So therefore we write down the first bracket, just leave it, that does not change. And then for this bracket here, we can make that into a difference of 2 squares to make two identical brackets. Square root of 1 is 1. Square root of x squared is x. And then we make again one bracket positive and one bracket negative.